Morning, everybody. Well, I guess we'll do fan motors as a part of the basic HVAC video series. What I've got here is a bad fan motor. It's 825 RPM. It's a 1/5 horsepower motor, and if you look on the nameplate of the unit, we've got 1/5 horsepower, single phase, 208 230, 1.1 amps. That's what the motor is rated for. The only thing it doesn't give, which I wish it would, is the RPM. The RPMs are very important. If you take an 825 RPM motor and you try to put a 1075 RPM motor on it, you will have to quadruple the horsepower in order to get the right amp rating and for the motor not to overamp. And so you have to go back with what the manufacturer put in it. So what I've done, instead of going back to the manufacturer and getting the correct motor, what I've done is just went to Johnstone, got a generic motor. You see it's good for 1/3 through 1/5 horsepower motors. And it's rated for 2.4 through 1.4. So at 1/3 it would be 2.4, and at 1/5 it would be 1.4. So I'm good on my amp rating on this. So we're going to get it out, and we're going to have to change the capacitor and the contactor on this one, because the ants have gotten into the contactor. I tried to clean them out, but contactor's sticking. So let me get started. Take this off, disconnect it from in there, and we will get going. Alright, so I've got the top of it off now, and I did just clip the wires because I'm not worried about those right this present time. I did want to show you something though. The bearings on this motor have went out, and I want to show you. If you take it and you spin it, see how it just stops? That is bad bearings on this motor. So no reason to even get your meter out to check it, to check the amps. All you gotta do is spin it. That's just a kind of a time saver. So anyway, I'm gonna get this thing apart, get the new one in, and we will go over this motor. The new one will have a 3-wire or a 4-wire connection. I'm gonna show you what to do. I could just leave this capacitor in here, but I'm not going to, because I like to only have and actually the new motor calls for a 7.5, and this capacitor is a whatever by 7.5. So I may not have to change it, because I just put this capacitor in last year, but I will check it to make sure everything is good. So if that's the case, then that would be great. That's just something else the customer doesn't have to buy, and we will have to change the contactor. I did have to change the contactor last year because it went out, but this year the ants have gotten it, so we'll check that. Alright, so we've got my motor out of the box, got the old one in the box, and I want to talk to you about something. Somehow I didn't have a good hold of this motor, and it fell. I mean, I caught it, but when I did, it just caught this corner, or just caught this stud, and let me show you. See how it broke off right there? Just long enough. So what I had to do was go out to the truck, take a motor off the truck, grab the stud off of it, replace it with this one. Then I'll have to find an old motor that I have somewhere, well, my scrap pile, and take the stud off that one. But no harm, no foul. Able to fix it. Now, these motors are multi-position motors. You see, you got this, and these are for reams and roods. But the ground wire. Now, what I always do, because when I mount this to that grill, it's going to mount to the top of the motor. top of the condenser, which in turn is grounded to the by screws. So I always take and just cut that ground wire off because you really don't need it. And then this motor comes with a plug for drainage. And what I'll do is I'll get my, but you see you have one at the top, and you have some, you have some up here. You have this one right here, and what you do is you take that one out. So if any water gets in there, then it will drip out of the hole there. And then what I'll do on this one here is I'll get my liquid electric tape, and I'll coat that, so see how it's loose. So we don't want water in there at all. So that's what we're gonna do with that. So let me get that done. All right, so I use my handy dandy little jumper wires that I always wear around my neck, and hook my alligator clip up to my lead of my meter. Got it set on microfarads. And now what I'm going to do is go over to the fan side and test it. You see I got 7.3. So I'm going to leave this capacitor in. Like I said, it is only a year old, and so we'll be good on that. So that's just something else the homeowner doesn't have to buy. And then we'll hook our commons back up. Hook our commons back up there. And then we'll go ahead and pull that wire out because I've cut it. We'll go over to the contactor and pull the common out. And then I'll hook that one back up to the capacitor. And there you go. So there's your motor leads right there. Alright, while I'm waiting on the liquid tape to dry, they got it right there. Right there. I love this stuff, man. It does good stuff. While we're waiting on that to dry, I pulled the contactor out already, and you can see down there, this contactor was new last year. At one time, it had a protective cover over top of it. You can see a screw hole right there and a screw hole right there. It had this protective covering. Reason for that protective covering is to keep the ants out of it. Well, guess what? It didn't do a job, or it didn't do its job. So we're going to go ahead and mount it, and the screws that was in there had waddled the holes out enough to where now I have to add new screws. So I have this little compartment, this little container, plain old waterproof 7-inch storage stowaway organizer. It is waterproof. See, I got some rusted stuff in there. Well, the reason why is because last Saturday I was on a job and it started just sprinkling, and I had this open, and sure enough, water got in there. So if it's watertight, that means water can't get in and water can't get out. So I have rust on my stuff, but this stuff normally is what I would normally carry in my front left-hand pocket. Fuses, because you never know when you're going to need them. Now the 1/4 and the 5/16, I need those every once in a while when I'm taking a coil out that somebody hit a screw on. So normally I wouldn't carry that in my front pocket. But all this other stuff, these little spade terminals, spade connectors, that's the 7/16, it's a 3/8 right there, 5/16, 1/4, various screws, wire nuts, connector to a circuit board, a brass Y terminal in case you need to jump a circuit board out to get the fan running. But anything that I would normally need, wire nuts, different wire nuts, and when they get low, I just replenish the stock in there. Alright, so I got my contactor mounted, and you see I got my power in. The only problem with this unit is you see contactors really, really close to the electrical connections. So you kind of have to loosen it up, slide your wires in there as you're lowering it down. So we're going to connect our low voltage. It doesn't matter which side it goes on. So that's pretty basic, really basic. And while you're over here, you might as well look at your wire connections to make sure that there's no bare wires and everything's tight. So as you see from this contactor, you have a switch here and you have a straight piece here. I've taken this one apart. So anyway, you want to feed your the wire going to your capacitor off that straight side there, and all your hot wires, your line 1 wires to your motor and your compressor off the switch side of the contactor. The black wire from the contactor, or from the compressor, I'm sorry, will go over here. I'm fixing to spade those out. You see, the last time I just put them under the lugs, but we're going to put spade terminals on them this time. Put it there, and then put your common one right there. So there you go. Alright, so I have taken my contactor apart. See, there's pieces of it in there. Now this was brand new last year. Doesn't even have a year on it. And that's what happens. You get ants in there. What happens, they love electricity, love it. And they get in there and they start gathering around. They get killed, they get electrocuted. And then, so then I don't know what it is. They see their buddies doing it, it looks like fun, and they just gather around. And then so, that's the top part of the contactor. And of course the spring was there, but, so yeah, so that's what a year-old contactor looks like with ants in it. So if you do go on one of these calls, if you're new in the field, or if you're a homeowner watching and the guy comes back to you and says, hey, you need a contactor, well, I just put that in. Well, you had a lot of ants. Well, there you go. Ants will definitely shorten the life of the contactor. So you need to be spraying some ant spray, put some powder, whatever kind of insecticide you want to use. See, look, they're waiting for the new contactor to show up. Alright, so I got my compressor wires spaded and put on the top, and then of course my capacitor's hooked up, and my compressor wires on my capacitor. You know, I've got these wires tightened down, these are tightened down here. So now all I have to do is mount my fan motor and hook up the wires, and then go over to my tool bag, get some wire ties, and tie all these wires up. We'll be done, and then check it out. Alright, most of the time when you buy a aftermarket motor, it's going to have a spade terminal on the capacitor wire, that one and that one, and then I guess they figure you can just wire nut the two hot wires. But what I do, because I've got to fit them back in the seal tight, it's a little harder to get them all 4 wires, because that seal tight only came with 3 wires to begin with. And a lot of the time these are 90-degree terminals, and they're harder to get through there. So I just cut these ends off and just put my own ends back on them. So I'm going to go ahead and cut them off, or I'll try to stick them through there and see if they'll go through there. If they will, I'll leave them. If not, then I will cut them off, make my new ends. Alright, so we got our motor mounted, and all we had left to do is just mount it really on top. But we've got these 2 wires down here, or these 4 wires, and you see they've got spade terminals on them. What this is reversible. This motor, since it's multi-position, you can mount it either way, and you can reverse it, and that's what these wires are for. Yellow to yellow is one direction, and yellow to orange is a different direction. So I was watching a video last year or so by Dallas, and he got some 3/4 inch seal tight and put these connectors in that seal tight to hide it, and I thought that was a great idea. So I've got some 3/4 inch PVC conduit left over from a job, and that's what I use it for. So I'm gonna get that and then mount it there. It looks a little better, and I definitely agree. So I'm gonna get that mounted in there. Hard to do with one hand holding the camera, so I'm gonna do that, get it strapped on, so alright, so here's the instructions that comes glued to the motor, and you see it talks about your capacitor there, and usually a lot of times they'll have either a 3-wire connection or a 4-wire connection. It does not show on this particular label the 3 or 4-wire connection option, but on the motor it does. But I'm going to show you what you do with those, and then it shows you about the yellow and yellow wire, the orange and orange wire. How if you do yellow to yellow or orange to orange, that's counterclockwise rotation. And if you do yellow to orange and orange to yellow, that's clockwise. So I'm gonna get this thing mounted in place. Don't need no instructions on how to do that, and then we will show you how to do the 3 and 4-wire connection. Alright, so I got my wires connected. The only thing about using aftermarket motors is my wire was not long enough to reach where I needed to reach. So you see, I took a male and female spade connectors, put the male on this side, put the female on that side. It doesn't matter which side you put it on. You could actually use a wire nut, and I've used a ton of wire nuts before, and I know everybody that watching this video has used wire nuts, and it's not an unsafe practice or anything like that. I just had them in my little box there and decided to use them. So anyway, the 3/4 wire connector for the capacitor. Alright, this brown wire with a white stripe is nothing more the continuation of line 2 going into the motor. And as we all know, the line 2 connects to the common of the capacitor, which all it does is go over to the contactor on line 2. So if you use this wire and this capacitor wire, you actually have to mount a second capacitor. So why would you want to, when all you have to do is just wire nut it off, cut it, wire nut it off, and then you can use one dual run capacitor. You don't have to fill up your compartment with a second capacitor, and you don't have to figure out a way to mount it. I know some people just put it in the box and let it hang. That is definitely not the right practice to do. This is the preferred way to do it. I prefer to do it like that. If you want to buy another capacitor for it, I just happen to carry on my truck just about all the different combinations of dual run capacitors on the 5s, the 3s, and the 7.5s. So I do have on the truck what it takes to make one work. Like I said, in this case though, I was able to use the old one, and generally when you're replacing a motor, you do replace the capacitor along with it, but I knew that it was just replaced last year, and we took the reading on it at 7.3, so it is good. No reason to change it. So that is the story about how you do a 3-wire connector for the capacitor without having to run a second capacitor in the system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have him start it up. We're going to check the amps on the motor, and then I'm going to take wire ties and tie all these wires up together. That's our reversible wires in that 3/4 inch pipe. Turned out really good. Thank you, Dallas. I do use that all the time, so Just goes to show we all learn from each other on here. And I'm not embarrassed to say it, because every day is a school day. If you're not learning something every day, then you must be staying at home. I was going to say you must be staying at home watching YouTube, but if you're watching YouTube, you're probably learning something from it. So I'm going to have him start it up. I'm going to take amps on the motor, make sure everything's alright, and then load everything up and go to the next call, which is actually a zoning quote. So we'll see how that works out. Alright, so there you go. We're good. Now, like I said, I'm going to unplug it, strap all my wires up,